As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, as wonderful an attorney as I am, and as good as Stormy is at whatever it is he does, please do note that anything said in our podcasts are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, Stormy Andrews, founder of Yokel Local Marketing, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, and part 2 in our series about mega churches and churches and should they be tax exempt. In the first episode in this series, we bored you to death with some IRS terms and getting a good base understanding of what makes a 501c3 qualified for tax exempt status in the IRS's eyes. And now we are going to talk a little bit about the individual televangelists. As always, Zoe and I are looking at each other through Skype, yet we're still quarantined, safely in our homes, which is really getting boring as shit. How's it been going for you?
Peachy.
Peachy. But before we get into all this, Zoe is going to welcome 2 new countries to the Finances of their F Word team. Family?
Yes.
Team and family.
Yeah, welcome to the family team to South Africa and Switzerland.
Woo!
Woo-hoo.
What's going on, y'all? We appreciate it. All of a sudden, our numbers had kind of lagged, and then we saw they just all shot up. So everybody is getting pretty damn bored, I'm thinking, and I appreciate that, quite frankly. So thank you for tuning in while you're not like you have shit else to do, but we still appreciate
your boredom.
We'll take your
boredom
Absolutely.
and ride with it.
Absolutely. We no shame in our game. We're okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
So before we start talking about the evangelical preachers and some of their figures of what they're worth and some of their money maneuvering, Zoe is going to do a special report on, what is it, Zoe?
I did a deep dive into Christian rock, which you can imagine was so painful to me in many ways.
I enjoy seeing you in pain. I kind of get off on it a little.
Yeah,
I gotta be honest.
I know. I think that's probably why you made me do it. But yeah, in my continued efforts to tie in whatever you're talking about to, in some tenuous way, to music, I thought I'd have a little look-see as to the history of Christian rock, which, as I said, was mind-numbingly interesting to me, but actually no, it was quite interesting, the history of it. So apparently, not being my favorite genre of music, I don't know about you, if that's what you listen to before you fall asleep at night. But,
hard pass on that.
Yeah, moi aussi, but contemporary Christian music dates back to the late 1960s, apparently, and many consider Larry Norman to be the founder of Christian rock with his album Upon the Rock in 1969, whilst others consider those such as Chuck Smith's Cavalry Chapel in Costa Mesa, California, and the music they put out sounds riveting.
Oh, yeah.
To be the birth of contemporary Christian music. Even spitting that out makes me almost choke. But anyway, it in the late 1970s, Christian rock became more mainstream when it gained exposure when Bob Dylan became a born again Christian and released 3 albums between 79 and 81.
Are you serious? Bob Dylan?
Yeah, he apparently was all God Squad back then, and had released a few albums that were considered to be Christian rock.
Wow,
I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
I have to speak to my father, who is a huge Dylan fan, and I can't imagine that was his favorite period of his music either. But I will, ask him about that. around the same time, there was some harder rock Christian bands called Petra and Resurrection Band, and they brought harder rock into the Christian scene in the late 70s. But apparently, Christian rock really became large. Praise the Lord. In the 80s, with bands like Striper. Have you heard of them?
Of course.
Oh, I mean, I haven't. So
yeah, no, they actually played their videos, Soldiers Under Command, on Headbangers Ball.
Well, it does say from my research that they actually played their videos on MTV, and their album "To Hell with the Devil," which sounds a little bit naughty to me, but anyway, "To Hell with the Devil" was the first Christian rock album to go platinum.
Oh, I didn't really think it sold. Oh, okay then.
Yeah, apparently it did.
Guess so.
And it also, as you said, it was played on MTV, and it got some mainstream radio play. And their hit song "Honestly" was "Sugar" was apparently very big. Did you hear I just said sugar?
Yes.
Look, because we're talking all Christian, I've felt the need not
modified your language. I love it. What did you do? Spill something?
I dropped a pen on the floor and said sugar.
Oh, I like this new Zoe.
I know it's not gonna last.
That's okay.
But apparently, during their concerts, they would throw pocket-sized Bibles into the crowd. Sounds like a right raving concert to go to. So,
did it also mention what they would wear?
No, do you know?
They would wear yellow and black because somewhere in the Bible it mentioned they look like bees basically, and yellow and black as they were tossing the Bibles out to the crowd.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is why I had to get up, just so you know.
Okay. I did wonder what you were doing.
Yeah.
Either way, it sounds like a right fun night out, and I'm sorry I missed it. But then there was an explosion of Christian rock in the 1990s. Some identifying as Christian alternative rock bands. I've never heard of any of these, so do shout out if you have. Like Jars of Clay, Newsboys, and Audio Adrenaline. And during the late 90s and early 2000s, there was more mainstream exposure with bands like Skillet, Cutlass, and Disciple. Again, never heard of any of them. But the point being that Christian rock was kind of going into all different genres of music during that time. And I didn't realize this, but you know Amy Grant, who had the hit with Baby Baby, she was a Christian. She was one of the first purposefully Christian pop stars.
Yeah. And do you have any more research on her before I interject?
Other than her song "Baby Baby" was actually obviously a secular love song, wasn't Christian, but it was featured in her 1991 Heart in Motion album and was a big hit for her. But she was purposefully Christian, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But no, what else are you going to say?
Yeah. So she was a Christian singer first, but there was a big uproar in the, I guess, diehard Christian community because the guy that was in the video with her for Baby Baby wasn't her husband.
Oh, shock horror. And were they holding hands or something?
They were holding hands. It's not like they were having sex. They were holding hands and like kind of, walking, like a montage of them, if I can remember the video right, like walking around and like jumping on, she's jumping on his back and she's singing to him and stuff. And everybody's like, "That's not your husband." I'm like, get over it.
It's just a video.
Yeah. There's right. Have you ever seen the South Park episode on Christian rock?
I don't know if I have. I mean, I've watched quite a few episodes, so but I don't know if I.
It was Cartman. I can't even remember what their name of their group was, but like they were doing an album shoot.
Yes, I think I did because I think it was on the other day, and they were trying to decide what kind of band they should be, and they decided to be a Christian rock band.
Because it was the easiest place for them to sell albums or something. And he's like, don't look at the camera, stupid. So they're all like looking to the sides and looking up and down, and then
I love South Park.
something in there.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember Cartman saying something to the effect of, yeah, and I think we're having a little bit of an echo again, and I don't know what that's from, but I can't take it out. It was in the last episode, but this is, you know what, this is quarantine, y'all. This is how it happens. But Cartman had said something along the lines that Christian rock was easy to sing because you just changed baby to God or something.
Right. Yeah. And we'll get to that. I'm getting to his views about why Christian rock was easier in a second, but either way, it was very durable and lucrative. And one example of that is one of the most beloved Christian rock songs of all time. Again, never heard of it, but maybe you have. Is a song called "I Can Only Imagine," which was written by Bart Millard of the band Mercy Me. And apparently anyone who knows anything about Christian rock, knows this song, grossed $83 million. So
I have never heard of those people or that song in my life.
Well, make sure that you put that on the playlist, because apparently I Can Only Imagine is a big deal in those circles.
But that would be the only song on the playlist because we're not really talking about too much music.
Oh, I've mentioned a few bands.
Okay,
you've got to have.
Okay.
Fair's fair.
Okay, all right.
We don't want to be discriminating against Christian rock.
This is going to be the best playlist ever. You guys are sitting at home, working at home, and you need something to get you through your fucking day. You pull up our playlist on this episode, and you're going to be rocking your fucking socks off.
So I Can Only Imagine. And there'll be a bit of Baby in there from Amy Grant for us all to actually recognize one. But as with the South Park episode, the criticisms were often that Christian bands focus more on their lyrics than the music, and so they could get away with being pretty shite at the music as long as their lyrics conveyed their Christian message. And
much like politicians.
So Lily just had a little fit. I don't know what happened there, but anyway, she's left the scene. It's all too much for her. She's not digging it.
Yeah.
It's probably because I was just getting to like thrash metal.
There's thrash metal Christian?
Yeah.
Stop it. Oh, come on.
Vengeance. There's a band called there's all kinds, like I said. There's metalcore Christian band called Tao, ZAO, and then thrash metal Christian band called Vengeance Rising. And there was, in the 2000s, an independent label was formed called Tooth and Nail, and they pushed punk and alternative bands into the Christian mainstream. And there was an emo band called Under Oath, which was apparently big. So I tell you what, they tried every possible genre of music. And like I said, many had pretty bad reputations, but they did pretty well because they didn't have to. A lot of parents would let their kids go to the concerts and they would get record deals because as long as they were spouting out a good message, then it didn't really matter how good the actual music was. So that was kind of like the problem. So as the years progressed, it became more about not necessarily wanting to be pigeonholed as a Christian rock band, and more being bands being led by Christians, so, or religious types. So for then, for example, people, like I said, they shied away from having that label, and you had bands like, what I'm going to say.
Oh, I hate this band.
Creed, Evanescence, Doubttree, Paramore, even a Christian rapper I've never heard of, but Lecrae, apparently, and even U2, who, Bono is very spiritual, and God Squad, but they, and even more recently, I guess, The Killers and Imagine Dragons. They're both Mormons, so they're more about being, I guess, religious and faith-based, but not being pigeonholed into that Christian rock because it's so naff, I suppose. But still, I guess Christian rock still has its place somewhere, but not in my house.
I guess. Yeah, I'm not a fan, and I'm actually on my, you guys might have heard a tiny bit of music right there because I'm on my phone trying to find, there's a Jewish rapper, an Hasidic Jewish rapper that actually has a song that I do actually have on my iPhone and I cannot fucking find it now, and I can't even remember the name of the song, and now I'm going to have to find it because it's going to drive me crazy because actually it's a great rap. But when you talked about that as long as their message was there and if their music sucked, it was okay. There's a lot of thrash and metal bands that have positive messages, but they just do it. They don't have to have that, hey, I'm a Christian, stigma attached to it. But this specific rapper, like I said, he's a Hasidic Jew. I don't know if he's from Israel or if he's across the way, I don't know, but I'm going to have to put him on the playlist if I can't find him, but I really want to find this guy because the other day my music was on shuffle because we are in fucking quarantine, and it came on. I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot about here it is. It's Mati Sayhu, MatisayahU, and it's off an album called Shake Off the Dust, and the name of the song, I don't know if it's going to play it if I do this, is Chop 'Em Down. So that's like a Hasidic Jew being, and he's talking about like the Israel's leaving Jerusalem or Israel's leaving, not Jerusalem. Where do they leave? I don't even know. This is how horrible I am.
You're talking about
Egypt.
Oh,
yeah, when they were slaves and all that kind of stuff. But it's like a reggae rap, and it's actually really good. And it's a more of a storytelling. That's the only song I own by him, but it's really good. So thank you for that.
Put that on the
I will. That's why I wanted to make sure, because out of all the shit that you just said, that's going to be the only song that's going to be decent on that playlist. Because I mean, Creed. So this is an interesting story about Creed. When I was in the radio industry in Seattle, Creed, I don't know who the lead singer is. Do you have it in your notes? Yeah, whatever that
no.
fucktards.
Yeah. It didn't do that. When I said deep dive, I was kind of lying because...
Moderate dive? Well, I'm glad you didn't...
It was more of a belly flop.
Belly flop
into Christian rock.
Like dipping your toe to test the water. So the lead singer for Creed...
I didn't like it.
There was a... Yeah, it's not one of my favorite, but the lead singer for Creed, there was a DJ that was very popular within the Seattle area that had told a story about how Creed is like, with arms wide open, and he's doing a lot of the what is this called? Prostating, right? Where you're like making the sign of the cross with your arms, prostating when he does concerts. That he was in the car and he was all fucked up and he was trying to find some chicks to have sex with when he was married and had a baby. Now I'm saying allegedly, because I don't know, but that's what one of the DJs had told me. And I just thought, you know what, that's, again, it goes to the hypocrisy of exactly kind of at the heart of what we're talking about here. So for all of you Creed fans out there, get over it. I'm just telling you that that's what it was. I hate that song. Human Clay, that album was huge and it just drives me crazy. So now, to infuriate and stimulate you even more, we're going to talk a little bit about the evangelical people. And we're going to touch on just a couple TV evangelists that you probably know. And then we're going to move into a really deep dive in Joel Osteen. And I keep calling him Joe Olstein, like I'm moving the L, but it's Joel Osteen. But let's talk first about Joyce Myers or Joyce Meyer. Why I made her plural again. I don't.
God, like George Michael's.
Everybody's got to be plural. So Joyce Meyer, not Myers. Mm-hmm. She is a big preacher, and the only reason why I even put her on this list is because all of the big preachers are all men, and I thought, okay, let me just try to be fair. And besides, like Tammy Faye Baker, there's just not really a whole bunch of very successful female preachers. But I put her on this list just to kind of balance it out as much as I could. And she was pulling out a salary, and then she decided to take out a reduced salary in 2004. And what she decided to do after getting a lot of criticism because her television ministry was bringing in $95 million a year. You should see Zoe's face. She's pissed and disgusted. Yeah, $95 million a year. And
she's doing the Lord's work, though. So
she's
God bless her.
At $95 million a year. And so until January of 2004, she received a salary from her organization and donated all of her book royalties back to the ministry. Okay.
What was her salary?
I don't have it here.
Okay.
Yeah, but good question.
I'm sure it's more than the minimum wage, right?
Yeah, I don't think she's making less than $15 an hour for sure. And so now what she decided to do is she says that she's going to retain all the royalties on her books sold outside of the ministry through retail establishments like Walmart and Amazon and other Christian bookstores, but she will continue to donate the book royalties that come through her ministry back to her ministry. And this is very important because when we talk about Joel Osteen, we're going to talk about why that's a big deal, because there's that weird intermixing that we were talking about in the previous episode with the IRS, things that they warn you against where we're kind of blurring the lines as you're moving through. And so she stopped taking the salary. She donated back her book sales, but at least even before that, before 2004, she was still donating a lot of her royalties back to the ministry. But if you're making
of her 95 million
of her 95 million, correct. And I had here somewhere how much money she was actually worth, and I can't find it right now. So it's probably hodgepodge. Oh, here we go. Her net worth is $8 million. And so this is derived from public speaking and book sales. And, she came through a very bad childhood, et cetera, et cetera. She made her own ministry, radio, BET in 1995. And then she's continuing to be on the air. And she was number 17 on Time Magazine's 25 most influential evangelics. Evangelics? I don't know where.
Evangelists, yeah.
Yes. And so as you guys know, I'm trying to put all of the resources, links from all of my resources. So if you feel so inclined, you can go and you can research this stuff yourself. The problem is that Apple specifically only gives you like 500 characters. And so when I'm putting all of these resources, because we do a lot of research for this podcast, and when I'm trying to list all my resources, I just don't have enough room for it. So if there's anybody that I ever leave out, it's never intentional. It's just the fact that I run out of room, like I said, specifically on the Apple description, but it is on our main classic feed description. So anyway, so that's Joyce Meyer. I almost said Myers again. So friggin' close. Then we had, for my 80s babies, you will remember Jim and Tammy Baker. Did you guys know about them even in England?
The names sound familiar, but I think that's only from living here. I don't remember them.
Well, good for you. So they had the PTL Club, which stood for Praise the Lord, and it generated
PTL Club.
Yes, and it generated 100.
It sounds like the VPL Club, like Visible Panty Line Club.
Yeah, nope, it's PTL.
I'm often in that club.
Yes, you are. Yeah, you should really switch to thongs.
I can't stand them. That's a whole nother podcast right there.
Okay, well, and we're going to argue about why thongs are superior. Zoe and I will go at it maybe after a couple drinks. It'll be entertaining. So who are you telling you loved them?
My son has just left, and bless him, he didn't say, Mom, this time.
Oh, hey. Same one as last time?
Yeah, he waved and said goodbye.
Good. All right. Way to learn. So,
and I didn't stick a note on my door this time either, so that was good of him.
Yeah, so everybody's getting assimilated with quarantine. So Jim and Tammy Baker was big for the PTL Club, the Praise the Lord Club, and also the 700 Club. And the PTL Club generated in 1970, between that and the 700 Club, $120 million annually. and they took 200 million. Zoe's going crazy, and they used 200 million. Oh, you're gonna get more pissed because these numbers get fucking ridiculous. 200 million of the PTL funds. They built the Heritage USA Christian Retreat and Theme Park, because I mean, if you're
a theme park,
yes,
are you kidding me?
I'm not. So it's a theme park, I guess, a Christian theme park. How boring does that sound? That sounds miserable. I mean, God, even Disney World has pirates. I mean, shit. But
I kind of want to go. I kind of want to go to just see what the fuck that's all about.
Well, maybe if we got drunk enough, and I don't even know if it's still open, but maybe if we got drunk enough, then it would be fun. I don't know. But yeah, so they opened up a Christian theme park. And so what was in it uncovered, for those of you who are probably not, but you should be, Sam Kinison fans, and I've posted this, I think, on our social media before. Jessica Hahn was his secretary, smoking hot, went and got a huge boob job. I don't know if that was before or after, but Jim Baker had an affair with her, and that in itself wouldn't have been a big deal. But what he ended up doing was they took $287,000 of PTL contribution money to pay Jessica Hahn to keep silent, and it was a huge deal. And that's when they really started looking at their lifestyle. Jessica Hahn said that she was raped, and Jim Baker later said it was consensual, but Sam Kinison put her in his video for Wild Thing, and she's writhing around on the floor and her boobs are completely out, and there's slashes in there, and Duff McKagan is in there. No, I'm sorry, it was Steve Adler was in there, and Steve Tyler was in there. It was like basically all of the 80s rockers was in Sam Kinison's video, watching him wrestle Jessica Hahn with her tits out. It was insane. My dad's a huge fan of it because her boobs are amazing. So you have to, and Sam Kinison, for those of you who don't know, and we need to take this to a different podcast, Sam Kinison actually was, I think, was in training to be a Protestant preacher, and then decided that from his surmising that the church was full of bullshit, and he decided to go be a comedian, and he was very rude and lewd for his time, and he did a lot of drugs, had a lot of sex, hung out with rock stars, and he was a very funny guy. And it was later revealed when he died that his brother had said in documentaries that he actually donated on the down low hundreds of thousands of dollars to different Protestant churches from all the money that he got from being a comedian, and never told anybody. And the thing that, kind of, for everything you can think about Sam Kinison, and he did a lot of Bible humor. There at the very end of his life, when he got hit by, I believe it was the drunk driver, and one of his friends was following behind him, the guy was cradling his head, and I guess Sam was in and out of consciousness, and he said, but I don't want to go. Like Sam was like staring at something else, and he was like, but I don't want to go. And then Sam goes, okay. And he dies. And that's like, yeah. So, I mean, whatever you say about Sam Kinison, fuck you guys, because he's great anyway. But so that was what happened. And of course, then when Jim and Tammy Baker, they got found out with their lavish lifestyle. And of course, the air-conditioned doghouse was the big one. They had gold-plated bathroom fixtures. And what ended up happening...
Who doesn't, though?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I have it now. I should probably clean it. It's really hard to keep clean, though. Yeah. Gold-plated fixtures. And what ended up happening is that Jerry Farewell, who we're going to talk about here in a second, took over the PTL club after the scandal, and he ended up bankrupting the company. So Jerry Farewell just did not do too well. Then we have Jimmy Swaggart, and unfortunately, my mother loved him. And he ended up having sex with a prostitute, and he was worth... Yes, and he was worth about $12 million between his radio and his family worship centers. And then he got busted for being with a prostitute, and then it was a whole scandal. Then he came out and he's like, oh, forgive me, and God's forgiven me, or somebody's forgiven him, or asking people to forgive him. Basically, he slept with a prostitute, and he got busted for it. Then there is, which I think is the most unfortunate name of a pastor, is Oral Roberts.
Oh, that's a fantastic name.
It is. So he was worth, at the time of his death in December of 2009, $15 million. And he had the Oral Roberts University, and we're going to come back to that because that's going to be a player in one of our next big.
I want to go there.
I don't even know if it's still open, but basically he created it's a Christian university. I think it might have been a pastoral university or something, but this is going to come back to one of our big TV evangelists. And anyway, so he had said in 1980, and Sam Kinison, taking this back to him, actually was talking about Oral Roberts, and Oral Roberts said that he saw a 900-foot Jesus in the desert. And I can't remember for the life of me what the Jesus told him, but, Sam Kinison was basically, hey, take your meds, Oral, and then maybe you'll stop seeing these 900-foot fucking Jesuses. That was his stand-up. And then in 1987, and this fucking pisses me off so bad, I hate people hiding behind God. In 1987, he told his followers, congregation, listeners, that if he did not raise $8 million, God would call him home. So how does that make you feel, Zoe?
I think you can probably tell. Disgusted. $8 million for what?
$8 million, or God was going to call him home.
Call him home.
Yeah.
Well.
And he raised it. So God didn't call him home. But it would have been interesting to see if he didn't. What would you have done at that point? Off yourself, or you would have came up with some shit like, Jesus talked to me and he said, hey, it's okay. You didn't raise $8 million, but you tried. You're
and
good.
That's all that matters. We forgive you.
Yeah,
we'll
but
take
honestly,
whatever you've got.
Yeah. Or maybe he didn't raise $8 million and he just said he did, because you can't tell your congregation, hey, we didn't raise $8 million, but you can't go back on that shit. And so then we come to, before our big kahuna we're going to talk about and do a deep dive in, we come to Billy Graham. So Billy Graham, he has been an advisor to many, many, many presidents. He was a Southern Baptist preacher. And my favorite thing out of all of this, his net worth before death was $25 million. And this was between real estate, book royalties, the two nonprofits, one netting $635 million in revenues in 2016 and another with $101 million revenues in 2010. So in 2010, his son William took over and runs it now. And his son William is paid $1.2 million in 2008 numbers. Okay, remember what was going in 2008? $1.2 million in 2008 and $880,000 in compensation in 2014 to run the two charities. And so on our next episode, we're going to talk about how much people get paid for nonprofits, and is that something that's realistic? And so his son is pulling down, at least the time of 2008, which was the last time there was data, $1.2 million a year to run two fucking nonprofits. And, they have purchased some acreage for libraries and religious training centers and spiritual retreats, etc. Now, I thought this was very funny. Billy Graham has been quoted as saying a couple things. One of them is, quote, "Greed causes a great deal of harm. Our hearts aren't satisfied by materialism. They can't be. That's why you see someone who has made millions driven on to make more millions." Pot calling the kettle black. People confuse amassing money with security, but it is not so. What a pity to confuse real security with making money. And then he goes on to say in a different quote, "Envy and greed always exact a terrible price. I have never met an envious or greedy person who was at peace." So I don't know how he takes being worth 25 million and he takes those things, especially the one about millions making you want more millions. It's fucking beyond me. It's fucking beyond me. And this is the thing. I'm not mad at people for starting a company. Like Bezos is worth 126, billion, 120. Yeah, I always forget. $126 billion. And we've talked a little bit about it, and they didn't pay taxes and all this stuff. But in the end, I mean, our system is a capitalist system. So if you can fucking take a company from a little shithole office and be worth $126 billion, God bless you. Like, good for you. What I have a problem with is where you have people who are posing as something and then getting a tax exempt situation. And I'm not saying that you should live in poverty. And when we talk about our next guy up, Joel Osteen, one of the things that he preaches, as do seem most of the pastors, including mine, that the Bible does not want you to be poor, that the Bible wants you to live in prosperity, that God, not the Bible, God wants you to live in prosperity and be, and be filled in riches. So anyway, but it drives me crazy when I see this and you have the balls to talk to people about fucking being greedy, and then you are worth so much fucking money. So on one hand, I'm like, hey, good for you, man. Like, good for you being able to build a business. But if these are nonprofit businesses, then you're piggybacking book sales on it, and that's where you're getting a lot of your money and your speaking engagements. That's where I have a problem. And that takes us right into Joel Osteen. So what do you know about Joel Osteen, Zoe?
I've never even heard of him, but I can already tell I don't like him.
Google him right now, because on our last episode, I'm going to do this. On our last episode, Zoe was referring to a preacher who had you put his hand, his hand up against the thing. And one of the things
scary looking.
And one of the things she said was because I listened to that episode today, because I listened to all of the episodes like 100 times between editing and putting them on our YouTube channel, which is launched. We have about 25 episodes up there. Some of them have us in the studio. Some of them are just audio. She's making a horrible face. Yes, he has clearly had a fuck ton of work done. His face is pulled.
He could afford to, right?
Right, absolutely. And so
you've got to look good for the people when you're saying, and whatever happens, like that last guy, doesn't matter if you're not working, do not forget to tithe.
Why he's talking like this with his face like so tight. Yeah. So I knew that once she saw him, she would be like, what the hell? So let me drop some knowledge on you about Joel Osteen.
Drop it.
I'm going to drop it. Okay. So depending on the articles you read and the research you've done, he is worth either $40 to $110 million. Okay, he is the head of the Lakewood Church, which is the largest Protestant church in America, and it gets about 52,000 people attendance a week. That is not including the 7 to 10 million people who view it worldwide in over 100 different countries. Now, we are not, the podcast is not to 100 different countries yet, but we're working on it. So,
we're close.
We're super close. We're like we're right there on the edge.
Hallelujah.
So close. And so anyway, so he's worth anywhere between $40 to $110 million. He's on in 100 different countries. He has so many people that go to his weekly church that they have to meet in the Compaq Center in Houston, the former home of the NBA Rockets. Like, this is how big this motherfucking church is. And one of his books, Your Best Life Now, was on the New York bestseller list for 200 weeks. And it has been said that between his book sales, radio shows, public speaking fees, and church collections, he reportedly generates $55 to $70 million per year. And this is not this is a family affair. So his wife, Victoria Osteen, is also a pastor in the church, and she does one of their events that we're going to talk about here in a minute, that when I start getting really animated and pissed off. And they also have his mother brought into the thing, Dottie Osteen. And so Dottie and John, Joel Osteen's parents, were married, obviously. John passed away and gave to his son, Joel, his television evangelist thing at 54. And Dottie, the mother, she is also in the book writing game. So you have Joel Osteen writing books, you have Dottie, the mother, writing books, and then you have his wife, Victoria, also writing books and also doing some type of preaching and things of that nature. So he has 28 million followers on Facebook and Twitter, and another 1.8 million on Instagram. So if any of you guys have seen our Instagram, we're a little blue. I can't imagine how that must be the dullest Instagram feed ever. And I should have, in hindsight, I should have looked at it. Go ahead. All right, Zoe's on it while I'm doing this. And so he was famous for, in 2005, he famously stopped taking his $200,000 pastoral salary. Okay, so let's stop for 1 second. Now, I don't know if pastoral income is based on a sliding scale, like the more church, I don't know what the word is, parishioners, whatever, that you have. if, you get more money, or if there's a common sliding scale for as big as a church gets, you get paid more money. But he was getting paid $200,000 to be a pastor. Now, one of the things that we talked about in the IRS guidelines is that you cannot have, when they talk about pastoral income, it cannot be excessive. And so when I look at that, I go, okay, well, so you gave up your $200,000 annual salary, and okay, so good for you in 2005. But at the same time, is that not considered excessive? Do you think that somebody should get $200,000 a year to be a pastor? Now, you might say, hey, this man has so much reach. He's reaching, over 10 million people every single week. So if you do that by a quantitative basis, it's not really that much money that he's getting. But regardless of either way, he ended up giving that up, and we're going to talk about that $200,000 salary that he so graciously forego represented 0.22% of the church's overall budget. 0.22% of the overall church's budget. So when we hear that he gives up a $200,000 salary, you're like, wow, fuck, that's great. Yes, but it's 0.22% of the overall church's budget. And we're going to do a deep dive breakdown. So what'd you find out, Zoe? Because I see her flagging me.
Well, he's got 4 million followers on Instagram. And it's basically just looks like it's videos of his sermons and then memes and then, memes. I mean, obviously not memes. It's like be still and, it's just.
Be still and listen to God stuff.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Then there's his wife is clearly, she looks like she's had some work done too, but it's just what you'd imagine it would be.
So awful.
Yeah, but 4 million people, including someone I know, following it. Oh, 4 million.
So 4 million followers on Instagram, and they also live in a house that is worth $10.5 million. It is a 17,000 square foot house. Him, his wife Victoria, and their 2 kids live in, and it has 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, 3 elevators, 5 wood burning stoves, and 1 bedroom and guest house, and a pool house. And what makes it even better is that they left their previous residence to move into this house, but their previous residence they held on to, which is valued at $2.9 million. So when we talked on the previous episode, we were talking about that they have that a lot of pastors are given living expenses and things like that. So where salary would be taxable to the person, but living expenses and or travel budget may not be taxed or may not be taxed as thoroughly. It's important that you kind of remember that stuff, and it's going to get really fucked up. The more I looked at this, the more pissed off I got. So finances are the F word. We hope that this is educational for you. And eventually we will end up getting sponsors on this. And I'm going to be totally okay with that. And we cuss a lot on this podcast, and we talk a lot of shit, and we talk about sexual nature and things like that. But we're also not trying to pass ourselves off as a man of God or somebody that's trying to tell you to lead something, some type of life that we're not doing it. And so this is where it starts really pissing me off. And so he just gets his sole income from his selling books and related products and his calendars and his day books and his inspirational pamphlets. Now, let's segue on that for 1 second. When we talked about Joyce Meyer, we talked about how she gave her royalties of her book sales that came through the church back to the church. Okay. If you look on Lakewood Church's website, and this is all shit I pulled off of Lakewood Church, go there fucking right now. It's there. In the store, there is all 10 of his books, plus his wife's books, plus his mother's books for sale. Okay. So now you might not be getting a pastoral income. I get that part. But if you're sitting there and you're selling your fucking books that are income driven through the church's website, how is that not a convolution of nonprofit and for-profit activity? And, I talk about my book on here, and we're going to talk about something Stormy's doing a little bit later, and Zoe's writing a book right now for children, and we talk about all that stuff, but we're not fucking nonprofit. So anyway, he went to the Oral Roberts University when he was young, and he did not graduate. So in 2006, when Osteen opened up, they had 56,000 people in attendance, and it was attended by Rick Perry and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. And it was also, he also had attended a Easter breakfast hosted by President Barack Obama in the White House in 2010. So between his books and his sermons, he has the Live at Your Full Potential, which is the whole basic thing where God doesn't want you to be poor and that God wants you to live in prosperity, which is all stuff that we are taught as well. And of course, he has made this to an extreme. And so before we get into some fun money facts, he fell under criticism. Well, he was actually, let me back up. He was sued by a band for copyright infringement, where they basically said that he had stole their song. The band's name was the American Dollar, and I don't know the details of it. I didn't get into it, but the judge ruled in favor of Osteen.
Oh.
So this poor band, I don't know much about them or their situation, but I was kind of like, fuck. So in 2016, Osteen came under fire because there was Hurricane Harvey that came through, and he has this huge amphitheater, and basically everybody's like, look, fucker, you make all this money, you talk about believing in God, and then you turn around and you're not helping the victims. So then finally he was like, okay, let me open my doors to the church, and he so refugees from the hurricane could come in there and stay there. But at no point did he take any type of responsibility for it. And he said, oh, the church has always been open. It's like, man, fuck you. So anyway, so let's get into some numbers, because this is a really big deal. Okay. So first of all, they don't have to release really good numbers, nor do they have to do it often like a publicly traded company. So the best information I could get was that in 2017, they released a financial statement which outlined how Lakewood Church spent their annual, at least at that time, 2017, $90 million budget. Okay. So let's go through it real quick. According to the financial statement, they spent $31.7 million on their weekly services. They spent $25.1 million on their television ministries. And they said that they spent $11.5 million on administrative and general expenses, and which made me laugh, and $11.9 million went towards fundraising. That's so fucking confusing to me. And then they spent a $1.2 million on various missions and outreach expenses, which, okay, $1.2 million on various missions and outreach expenses. Okay, so when you think of a church, my church is always doing outreach. They're trying to help housing projects, or they're trying to teach, or they're trying to help families out. So $1.2 million of this $90 million fucking dollar budget was spent on various missions and outreach expenses. That is 1.3% of the total fucking budget. How does that make any fucking sense? Out of that whole fucking budget, 1.3% you use for outreach and missions, and we're going to talk about their outreach in a minute, because this fucking pissed me off, and I'm really starting to drop the F word, so I'm going to try to scale it back. So one of the things that they do is they have $6.7 million in the budget for their Night of Hope. Okay? Now, this is one of the events that they have monthly, and they supposedly, as far as 2017, spend $6.7 million on the Night of Hope, which is across the country. And I had to look into it because I had no idea what it was. I had never heard of it. And I'm like, hey, this is pretty interesting. What are they doing? So from their website, it says, a Night of Hope events last 2 to 2.5 hours. They are filled with praise and worship music, encouragement from Victoria Osteen, his wife, a special testimony from Dottie Osteen, the mother, a prayer time together, and an inspiring message from Joel Osteen. There is no intermission. Prices range from $18 to $38, and they sell out every time. They sell out. Now, when I went looking for tickets, of course, we're all in quarantine and all this shit's been canceled. But when I went out looking for tickets, I found on excite.com that they were selling for April 3rd, which obviously was canceled. I think it was in Canada, for the Night of Hope tickets. They were ranging from $24 to $106. Now, I'm sure that's on the secondary market when we're talking about ticket pricing, and we've talked about this on this podcast before. And I got so sickened. Can you imagine if your church charged you to attend? I mean, I understand it's a special event, but so anyway, so here, let's break down some numbers. It is estimated that Joel Osteen makes $55 million per year. Zoe's throwing up in her mouth. And this is from a whole variety of everything that he does. So we're just going to look at some figures, okay? So $55 million per year, and let's assume that all of that is taxed at the 37% tax rate, which is the highest tax rate currently. And we all know, if you've listened to our tax episode, that the tax scale is built on stair steps. So the first portion of the monies that you earn at stair steps, so you have a blended tax rate. So you're not ever going to have all of your money taxed at 37%. But I said, you know what, let's just assume it. So if he was at $55 million a year, if he was taxed all of that at a full 37% tax rate, he would still have $34,650,000 a year. Okay. Now, let's assume out of that $34,650,000 a year, that 40% of the income is spent on living expenses. Okay, which is that's just a standard number. A lot of underwriters use it when they're trying to decide if they're going to give you a loan. They kind of look for a threshold of 40% or less, depending on the loan. So don't quote me on that because they can change. But let's assume that that's the rule of thumb. And he takes 40% of the income and he spends it on living expenses. And we're going to assume that the church gives him no support at all. No travel allowance, none of that kind of stuff. At 40% of his living expenses, that would be $13,860,000 a year that would be spent on living expenses at 40% of what's left over after taxes. So after taxes and living expenses at 40%, that leaves him with $20,790,000 left over. Okay.
Well, how can he survive on that, though?
I don't know. His poor children are probably drinking broth, and I'm sure their quarantine is really hard for them right now.
Bet.
Yeah.
Which house should we stay in?
I know. Do you think they had to fight over Spam?
I doubt it very much.
So then now the numbers get better. Okay, so now let's assume out of his $20,790,000 annual salary that he has left over after all that stuff, let's assume that he tithes 10%. And 10% seems to be the general rule of thumb. And I don't know if in the Bible it specifically says 10%. I don't think it does, but somehow 10% has become kind of like the standard tithe. That would be that he would be tithing $2,079,000 every year, which would still leave him $18,711,000 in his pocket. Now, this is why this pisses me off. When I was trying to research, okay, so they have a $90 million a year budget, but let's be fair. What good do they do? Because maybe they do a whole bunch of fucking good, and maybe they're out there and maybe they're really changing things in people's lives. So I'm like, let me go to their website. Let me see what they're doing. And they have a outreach to the community or some shit. I click on the link. And they do. They have, at the time that I researched this, 7 different ministries that they are doing around the world. But the best part is that you get to pay to go on them.
Right.
So, so you, not only do you get to either use up your vacation time, that you're not, hopefully you're getting paid for. But you also get the privilege of paying to go spread God's word. This motherfucker is pocketing $18 million a year just by really rough figures. And you get the privilege to go serve God and spread God's message by spending your own fucking money to go on these travels. My mind was blown. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. So then I broke down the numbers even more. So I said, okay, let's assume, and to be fair to Joel. See, I keep calling him Joe. No, Joel Osteen, maybe he tithes his ass off, and I just don't know. I mean, it's very possible. And you know what? And in the end, I guess it's his money, but it's his money that was kind of gotten in a way that's kind of fucked up? If you're saying this type of stuff, but then you're kind of taking advantage of it, it really gets under my skin, because for those of you who do believe in God, God is love. And I don't know how loving this is. And that, I think, is what pisses me off the most, because you can have a believer and a non-believer. You got Zoe and I here, but we both love people. We love each other. I think we're good people. And it just, this part infuriates me. So then I was like, okay, so let's assume that $2,079,000 that he takes, that he donates each year, if he does 10% of tithe, let's just see how many people that he could send on these missions without them having to pay. Like, just, hey, we need to go to these places, and we just want you to go, so we're going to pay for it because we want you to spread God's word. Okay? I think that sounds fair enough. The trip that was scheduled, these were scheduled and they've been canceled as of now, to Belize, May 23rd through the 30th. It was a men's only trip. It was $1,800 per person to attend. And he could have, on that $2,079,000, he could have sent 1,155 men on this missionary trip. They have a trip to Spain from June. It was scheduled June 18th to the 29th. Adults only, $3,000 per adult. He could have sent 693 adults. Uganda was July 17th through the 26th. It's for healthcare professionals only. They get the honor of paying $3,200 each. And with this $2,079,000, Joel Osteen could have sent 649 healthcare workers. They had a trip to Alaska from July 18th through the 27th for adults with $2,200 price tag on each of them. He could have sent 945 adults. San Francisco, between August 3rd and 8th for high school students, $1,500 each. Mm-hmm. And he could have sent 1,386 of them. And then El Salvador, October 4th through the 10th, adults only, $2,300 per adult. He could have sent 903 adults. And for India, this is their last one that was on their website. India, November 1st through the 10th, adults had the privilege of paying $2,700. And with that money, Joel Osteen could have sent 770 adults. Now, I don't know how many people they send on these missions, but if you're true to spreading God's word, don't you fucking think that you could have used your money to send these people to spread God's word so that these people wouldn't have to pay? And I get it. You know, when you're a believer, you know, you want to give to God because you want to share your prosperity and your abundance, and you want to help and you want to give back. But my thing is that people aren't going to have, you might love God and want to spread God's word. You're not going to have $3,200 fucking dollars to go to Uganda. Are you kidding me? To spread God's word? Like, motherfucker, you got the money. Why don't you pay for it? Anyway, I'm getting way animated, but do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's no different than the Mormon church making all these kids go on their missions. They don't pay for it. The families have to pay for it.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. And you're not talking about going for a couple of weeks like these missions. They're going for 18 months, 2 years. The Mormon church don't pay for it. The families have to pay for it. So, and how much money does the Mormon church have and earn? And how much property do they own? Mm-hmm. And you know, it's ridiculous, and it's not even a choice. There's so much pressure, you know, for them to go, particularly if you're a male. And probably more, almost as much for the women, but definitely for a male. And it's not the church that's paying for it. So it's exactly the same.
And again, that if you have the means to help spread the word of God, if that's what your mission is, then I just don't think that you should be asking people to flip these large amounts of money. And it really bothered me. And so this is what Joel Osteen is quoted as saying, and I'm just going to read one half of this. And I know this is a long podcast, you guys, but I hope this is interesting because this blew my fucking mind. So Joel is quoted as saying, quote, "Victoria and I never dreamed that God would bless us in this way that he has blessed us. When I wrote my first book, I didn't know if it would sell 1,000 copies or 20,000 copies, but it sold millions and millions of copies. Well, we never did any of this for money. But God has blessed us in such a great way. My dream was always to be able to work here and serve in the ministry and not to have to take a salary." Well, so he doesn't take a salary anymore, to be fair. So this is why this looks wrong. Okay, so there's a website, christianmoney.com. It's a blog that is written by James Paris. I'm hopefully going to be able to put this resource up there. And he's just really talking about the mixed message between a nonprofit and a profit, specifically when you're talking about religion. And he says, quote in the blog, "My view has always been that if you want to operate in the nonprofit world, you should not be in it to build a personal fortune." And so what we're seeing is a lot of these evangelists, they're going and they're building a brand with themselves, and then they're taking the having the access to all of these listeners through the name of God, and then they're selling tons and tons of stuff. And so James Paris goes on to point out that Dave Ramsey, he's a big financial guy in the financial sector, and although he is a Christian, he is not specifically holding himself out as a nonprofit. Well, he's not a nonprofit. And so James goes on to quote, Dave Ramsey has built a massive following through his media broadcasts and made millions of dollars from his books. Ramsey also owns a $10 million mansion himself near Nashville. There is a major difference, however. Ramsey does not ask for donations or operate as a nonprofit. And so
he
that's
pays taxes.
Right. And so that's the whole point of this episode, is that you can be a Christian and lead a rock band that isn't labeled as a Christian rock band. You can also be a Christian who works in the financial space that does things the IRS way, where it's like, I'm not as a nonprofit, I am for profit, but I do have a belief system that's in place, and that is just part of who I am. And he doesn't try to do anything else besides just be a financial guy who also happens to be a Christian. And when we're looking at people like Joel Osteen, and quite frankly, he was an easy target because he was the most information that was out on him that we could get. And he's a very wide known name as far as if we've talked about all these followers. And this is what bothers me as somebody who believes in God and somebody who works in the financial space. And the more and more I did these numbers, I just got more and more disheartened and upset. But nonetheless, money-wise, it was very fascinating. And I hope you guys found it fascinating too. Do you have anything to add on that, Zoe?
I just wanted to mention a TV show.
Okay.
That you probably haven't seen, but it's bang on point. It's called The Righteous Gemstones. It's on HBO. It's written and stars Danny McBride. It's also got John Goodman in it. And it's about a family of televangelists. Mm-hmm. And it is so spot on to everything that we're talking about. And it's so funny. Anything with Danny McBride in and written by him anyway is funny. But if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. And it just encompasses everything we're talking about this subject. So that's my final word.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't have HBO and I don't watch a lot of television, but that does sound like an interesting show. And then, of course, you guys have probably noticed that we do not have Stormy again. And my thoughts are we're probably not going to have Stormy rejoin us until we're out of quarantine. It's too hard to try to schedule the three of us. But what he is doing right now, for those of you who may or may not know, he is the founder of Yokel Local Marketing. And there's a lot of businesses right now, Zoe and I are both business owners, there's a lot of businesses right now that are struggling to figure out what the fuck their next move is. And basically, when we come out of quarantine, there's going to be businesses that have sunk, and there's going to be businesses that have been able to swim. And so one of the things that Stormy wanted to extend to you guys, for those of you who are business owners, is that he's rolling out a free webinar series where, he has marketing clients who pay him thousands of dollars a month for marketing programs. And he is rolling out to our listeners a free webinar, basically series where he's going to talk about marketing, and he's going to talk about positioning your business to a place that when the quarantine is over, you can come out of the gates running. And so if it's something that you want to be invited to, you need to email him at STORMIE. So Stormy with an IE, STORMIE at Yokel Local, YOKELLOCAL.com. So Stormy at localyokel.com. And in the subject line, he said, put finances, the other F word. And then that will give you an invitation he will send you to be on his webinar series. And at this time, we're not a nonprofit, but I sincerely want you guys to understand finances. And I want you to become fascinated with numbers. And at least if you can't be fascinated with numbers the way I am, at least kind of see how the numbers are relevant in the grand scheme of things, because a lot of the stuff we talk about is a big deal, and we really research the stuff. It's not something that we pull out of our ass. And I mean, I guess we've had 1 or 2 episodes where it was just kind of more fun, but most of the time I think we do pretty good fucking work.
Mm-hmm.
And on that tip, I had a listener recently reach out to me. The market is going crazy and the economy is all over the place. Our unemployment numbers just spiked with everybody that has been laid off as a result of the coronavirus outbreak. And so if any of you guys want to talk with me, like as far as a consultation on any questions that you might have, or just any general conversations about your knowledge, you can go ahead and you can do one of 2 things. You can email me at Mel, M-E-L, at Hot Moon Financial. So HOTMOONFINANCIAL.com. Or if you go to my website, hotmoonfinancial.com, you can actually book a time on my right on my calendar, so that if you guys have any questions, I can talk to you. Zoe had just posted an article about some of the good things that had come out of, like, acts of kindness that had come out of this whole situation. And, whatever little help we can do, we want to offer it. So if you're a business owner and you want to get some marketing tips, and Stormy's fantastic at it, Stormy at yokolocal.com. And then if you want to hit me up, Mel at hotmoonfinancial.com. And other than that, we will.
And me, if you have any cat questions, I am quarantined at home with 2 children, 6 cats, and a long-suffering husband. So if you have any questions about cats, I've just dyed my hair pink as I'm slowly losing my mind. So anything at all, just general or cat related, or dyeing your hair pink, or anything really, or being a Brit in America right now, or being, an expat generally. I don't know. It's extra hard right now. I feel being being thousands and thousands of miles away from home, and watching things develop in Europe, kind of 2 steps ahead of where we are likely to be. It's hard. So in any kind of way, if you want to reach out to me, then my email is bigsisfish@gmail.com, BIGSISF for Freddie.
ISH.
God, and that was, you've just witnessed Mel giving me a spelling lesson.
Woo! Only time. It won't.
So there you go. bigsisfish@gmail.com, just for anything at all. Also, we're all here together going through this. So.
Absolutely. And ask her about her cat Lily. She'll send you pictures and all kinds of shit. But anything that we can do to help you guys get through this, besides providing you free entertainment and just thanks for listening, and follow us on social media. We're trying to do 100 things, and seriously, check out the YouTube channel. It's under Finances, the Other F Word. I am putting videos up as soon as I can. It takes about 4 fucking hours for a video to go from editing to loading. So I'm only putting up about 1 a day, but hang in there and we'll eventually get all, 90 episodes that we can put up there. And as always, we appreciate you listening, and we will catch you guys the next podcast when we may be rounding out our series. We'll see.
Okay. Cheers. Bye.
Be sure to check out our Finances, the Other F Words playlists for each episode on Spotify.